So hello, in celebration of International Women's Day, I'm delighted to introduce you to Gillian Smith. Gillian is the founder, facilitator and life and leadership coach with Connect Lead Coach. Her passion is to inspire, develop and influence leaders to shift their focus to lead with their heart and their head in equal measure and move toward creating safe, innovative and creative places to work. Overall encouraging cultures of connection and sustainability where everyone feels seen, heard and understood. Gillian is a HR professional with over 20 years experience working with FTSE 100 ASX listed and privately owned companies, including ABB, Ventix, Shepherd's Group and Hayes Specialist Recruitment, which is how I got to know Gillian over 25 years ago when we recently reconnected here in Melbourne. Her three greatest achievements are her children, Mabel and Charlie, being a survivor of corporate burnout and using the experience to inform her current work, as well as making a real impact in the quality of the lives of her coaching clients. So welcome, Gillian.
Thank you, Louise. It's wonderful to be here.
Good. As you're aware, this year's theme is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. So I have 4 questions to ask you, which hopefully will inspire females to reflect on their career development and direction to meet the goals they personally have, as well as for hiring managers to reflect on how to accelerate progress. With the publishment of the recent Gender Pay Gap report, how do females navigate the career ladder to pivot into leadership roles?
So I think the first point is the launch of the Gender Pay Gap report, and having worked with WEGA over a number of years in my experience here working in Australia, I think giving parity and working out where we currently sit and where we need to go is a really good start. In terms of how females successfully progress through the career level and ladder and pivot into leadership roles, I would say there's probably a number of key areas that I would say is really important. I think society has a part to play in that because as we know from the research that's been conducted, the caring role predominantly sits with the female in our households. So those the ability to be able to juggle and organise and give capacity and space to be able to dedicate to a leadership role is definitely something that plays a part there, as well as organisations that have a proactive approach to fostering and developing females and encouraging that level of development. In fact, I've worked with a client in the last couple of years who've actually launched something called a sponsorship program, where they have identified high potential females within their workforce, and then they have partnered them with a key business sponsor within the business who can actually advocate for them for potential opportunities that they may not be considered for within the particular area that they work. I mean, I would say there's probably 3 things I would say somebody or a female leader can focus on. One is very much putting their hand up for the opportunity to lead different initiatives or projects within a business. Being a continuous learner and being able to apply what they learn within a work context, and building a degree of case studies or examples that they can talk through confidently. As well as, I think what factors in there based on my first point is the ensuring in your home life, your partner is really a partner. So Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In made a very key point around sharing the responsibilities and making sure they are shared, or looking at outsourcing opportunities as well in terms of where we can minimize what's on our to-do list and on our mental checklist, and actually outsource that, outsource those jobs or those chores where we can.
Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely is a partnership. It certainly is in my household anyway.
Totally agree. It is in mine too.
And in terms of advice for women who are currently in leadership positions, what advice do you have?
So I think, drawn on my own experience and the people that I work with on a regular basis, I would say there's a couple of things that spring to mind. One is very much knowing what your values are. I have worked with people who constantly are perhaps working within an organisation that may not align with their value set, and that in particular can be quite impactful. And likewise, conversely to that, where you are working with an organisation that is very much aligned with your values, in terms of what you are capable of achieving is limitless in a lot of ways. And from that, knowing what's important to you. As well as that, I would say boundaries are a huge element, and I don't think we've ever really been very either conscious or disciplined in understanding what they are and how to keep them. So I follow a lot of the work that Brené Brown has done around boundaries, and she really simplifies it in terms of what's okay and what's not okay. But making sure that we've had to think about, where does our boundaries lie, what is okay and what's not okay, and then how we maintain those and keep them, because that is what keeps us in our level of integrity there as well. I would also say don't be afraid to ask for help. I think in the current environment, when we are moving up the career ladder, there is and can be an automatic expectation that we know everything, and that's why we're sitting at the table. And if we ask for help, it can be seen as an element of vulnerability perhaps, or weakness, and I would challenge that and say it's smart to ask for help, because being aware of what you know and you don't know, and again bringing in that continuous learner to ask for help is a really smart move, rather than struggling through and working your way through it. So I would say they are probably my three keys in terms of advice: is the values, the boundaries, and ask for help if you need it.
No, I think they're all very valid. I recently did a mandate and placed a fairly senior female leader into a business who was actually reporting to another female, and the feedback she gave to me was that her new boss had said, look, I can learn a thing or two from you, and bring it on, I want to learn from you. So I think having that mindset to be very open and say, look, I want to learn from you as much as you might learn from me is something which is promising and exciting for anyone joining a new business. You feel you've landed on the right path.
That's right. Totally agree.
Good. And what strengths do you feel women possess in abundance, and how can they harness those strengths to shine in the workplace? So
I would say the strengths that women possess from a nurture perspective, I would say, is very much around relationships. I would say, and these are all generalist in my thought pattern, but building and generating and maintaining relationships are something that I have observed women have skills in abundance with. And so really it's around a collaboration. A lot of people, a lot of managers and leaders in workplaces today, whether they're direct reports or not, and you have a very matrixed environment potentially that you work in, you are inspiring other people to ensure that they're working together and working towards a common goal. So I think that level of collaboration is definitely something that is quite common in women. The other I would say is empathy. I think women, are, and again, sweeping generalization, but have the capacity for being more empathetic. I think definitely with others. I think sometimes as women, we're not very empathetic with ourselves. Yeah. But I think outwardly focused, we can definitely demonstrate levels of empathy in the workplace. And I think in terms of how we turn those up, if you like, in terms of allowing them to shine, I think in a lot of ways speaks for themselves. Because again, I go back to a previous point I made around the case study, or building those examples of where you've brought people together and achieved a particular outcome. I think that's how you showcase those particular strengths in your leadership role. Now, that's not to say that you don't hit speed bumps along the way, because you absolutely do. And not everybody wants to pull in the same direction. And, those are things that we take on a case by case basis. But I would definitely say collaboration and empathy are two of the core, I would say, that I see with women in leadership. Yeah.
I agree totally with those points. I was also thinking that women's intuition is also a valuable skill as well. And sometimes females might suppress and don't say what they think they are seeing and observing. So, that we're often right on the mark in terms of how we're feeling or what we're seeing or doing, but perhaps having the confidence to also make sure you have a voice about that intuition, it is important too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think with the intuition as well, like if you look at what comes with intuition, fact is on the other side of that continuum. And in any workplace, what's in black and white, so whether that's financial or specific feedback, that will definitely have a weighting. However, I would totally agree. I think with any intuition, you will be able to draw on examples, and it's the articulation of being able to draw on those examples that helps bring that confidence to speak up in those situations.
Good. And Gillian, what would you tell yourself if you were commencing your career?
Well, that's interesting, considering I commenced my career with you all years ago. So listen, what would I tell myself? I would tell myself that it's okay not to be liked by everybody, and that that comparison is something that you will do. It's an automatic human response. However, doing what you do really well is what's in your control. How someone else responds to that is outside of your control. So I think about the circles of concern and influence from Stephen Covey quite a lot, in terms of actually what's in your control or not. So definitely you don't need, it's okay not to be liked. As a self-confessed people pleaser, I will say, said by a true self-confessed people browser. I think the boundaries is the other piece.
Yes. Yeah.
That I've learned the hard way, and I would definitely give my younger self that level of advice and say no, what's okay and what's not okay, and be disciplined. And I think those two kind of interlinked.
Yeah.
And I would say, keep your work ethic. I think definitely putting in time and effort to increasing your skill set, continuous learning. I'm an avid reader, and I would absolutely encourage that with my younger self as well, because I think it's probably something I've got into a bit later in life. And I think the last thing I would say to myself is don't let your or not necessarily don't let, but know when your ego is at play. I feel like even though we talk about that potentially being something that's more apparent within our male colleagues, I think in my experience it has been it's not been helpful, but it's recognizing when your ego is speaking up. I think that is something to develop. That is something really important. And then conversely to that would be imposter syndrome is very normal, and I would say is very prevalent within the female community as well. And having watched and been to see Adam Grant last week in Melbourne, one of his key messages, which I think is very, very valid, is that you can use imposter syndrome as your fuel. And a lot of the data and research supports that those that are most successful are those that would openly confess they suffer from imposter syndrome themselves. So turn it into what makes you amazing at what you do.
Yeah, good. That's a really good comprehensive feedback. Thank you. I was reflecting, and I think one of the things that I learned quite early on in my career, and it took a while for me to get the confidence, is if you don't ask, you'll never know. So I think as women, we might not communicate sometimes where we want to go with our career. We sit back and think we're going to get picked. So verbalizing that, letting people know that yes, you're ambitious, or you want to do, or you aspire to do that role. And that also then interlinks a bit into pay as well. I think men are quite confident in terms of asking for pay rises, whereas females, once again, we want to be recognized for our work, and we wait for someone to recognize rather than be a bit more outward with that too. So that's certainly something that I see that on quite a daily occurrence when I recruit. If I've got a banding of a salary, females will often, be quite open, but will never aspire to get the top end of the band, whereas men will generally kind of aim straight away up to that top of that band. So it's certainly something that I think we all need to kind of just have that confidence and be quite assertive at times to make sure we have that voice as well. And I think That's also right. The importance of networks as well. Never underestimate that. Obviously I'm in recruitment, so networking is important, but who would have thought me and you would have been talking after 25 years? It just shows how small the world is, and how
That's right.
everyone you meet on your path you should treat in the best respect, because you never know who's what's going to happen or what's around the corner.
That's right. And I had a conversation with someone today around business cards.
Yes.
And, you know, obviously back then when we started business cards, we're very focal in what we did and that networking piece. And obviously things have changed completely since then. And, you know, one of the things that I recognize from the networking that I've done is anytime I've met anyone is to automatically, you know, build into my habitual process of what I do is to link in, to grow that, you know, that network. And I think definitely that's not to be underestimated, particularly given it's generally at our fingertips.
Yes. Yeah.
To be able to do that.
That's right. That's good.
Totally
Well,
agree.
Gillian, thank you for today. I think you had some amazing advice to give, and yeah, I need to do some more reading. So I need to get those notes of all the speakers and coaches that you are really, you know, invested in. And obviously, if anybody out there needs some coaching or facilitating or assistance, then feel free to reach out to Gillian for some great expert advice.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me, Louise. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you.